As you'll recall, Council authorized the formation of a citizen community task force to help us look at our fiscal situation and come up with some recommended path forward. And recall that this task force is technically designed to make a recommendation to me as the city manager. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our consultants, Steve Toller and Sam Lieberman.
And both of us are going to just tee up the conversation for you tonight in terms of the unanimous consensus recommendation that the Fiscal Sustainability Task Force came up to. Just by way of background, remember the last time that I was with you was to give you basically an overview of kind of the forecast. And remember that whenever we do financial forecast, the numbers never sleep. And what's key is just making sure that the numbers are continuing to be reviewed and updated. And I know staff is committed to using the forecast on an ongoing basis to review how things are coming in terms of revenues, what expenditure trends are happening, and whatnot. Cities, by and large, are funded through a variety of taxes and fees and charges, of course, the largest of which you have, the single largest, is property tax, which, as you know, Washington State is a levy state, and based on state law, you are only allowed to councilmanically, as the term of art is, allowed to increase that by 1% on an annual basis. And that's where, you know, the cost of providing services, especially in inflationary times and with the need that you have to maintain the infrastructure that you have and the other, you know, cost of services grows at a faster rate than that. Last, remembering again that numbers never sleep, is that the general fund, by which provides the most basic and important services that you're providing to this community, shows a variance, and it shows that there is a fiscal gap on the right-hand side where there would be a gap that can grow from 4 million up to about 21 million if it was not addressed. The next phase of this project then was to develop a set of recommended budget strategies for your consideration.
As mentioned, we met with the task force over 4 meetings. The first 2 were informational sessions, and the task force had the opportunity to review the budget strategies that we developed. And from those budget strategies, we did some homework in leading up to the August 10th meeting to evaluate those strategies and identify which strategies they may be in favor of supporting to help close that fiscal gap. How did they come to consensus? Well, I talked about homework that the task force was given. And they took home a spreadsheet and independently ranked the priorities, the strategies by priority. They had the opportunity to determine whether they would pursue it as a priority or not at all, and a spectrum in between. They did that independently and provided those responses to Baker Tilly, to us. We consolidated those priority rankings and presented them back to the task force at the August 10th meeting so they could see where each of them individually ended up in terms of identifying how they would prioritize a particular strategy. We went through each strategy and their prioritization together so they could review and discuss what each other thought in terms of how they might prioritize strategies, and really had a thoughtful discussion at the conclusion of reviewing those strategies independently about a combination of strategies that received the most support and how they might package those to close the fiscal gap. We used our fiscal model tool in the meeting with the task force to really start to play with the dials of how does this affect our general fund reserves in terms of which strategies we may recommend. Through that discussion and the turning of the dials, a proposal was made of a recommendation of strategies that we'll get into, and we did a thumbs up, thumbs down voting in terms of that particular proposal, and had a consensus thumbs up from the task force on those particular recommendations. And the recommendations that the task force developed are shown here. And again, these were the consensus recommendation from the task force that you see here, and 2 that are not 10 thumbs up, which was very exciting when it happened. That yellow area in between the lines of sort of additional capacity that the task force recommends be spent on capital infrastructure.
I'm going to turn it over to y'all.
First, I want to say that the consultants and staff did a good job of detailing estimates and process for raising revenues to balance a perceived growing budget deficit.
One of our major bullet points in here is a very robust communication strategy so that people understand where we are, where we're going, what the plan is, and how it works.
I thought there's got to be a strategy behind it. There's got to be a rationale behind it. There's got to be thinking behind it. And what would that be? I think that would serve this community much better. But I do want to say thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for everybody here. It has just been a joy to be with all of you. Thank you.
I also want to thank the city too for having an open and transparent process by which citizens can participate. And I found it a fascinating exercise just to learn about the city finances and just some of these different strategies and also how things are funded in the state of Washington. Just learning that was fascinating. And then also learning from the different experiences of my committee members. That was wonderful. I approached it from living in Sammamish, what are the things that are important to people? And it's parks, it's safety, it's roads, it's things like that. So if I was trying to fund those things, how would I want to do it? And I'd want to do it in a more permanent way where, as Michael said, you don't have to go out to levy to try to get funding all the time. And so, that's how we came up with the park strategy. And we all agreed we would help participate, in if that was a strategy you adopted. But I mean, that's important to people in Sammamish, and that was something they could understand.
And what I found most interesting was the information they presented on how we compare to other cities. How much do we spend per capita versus Kirkland, Mercer Island? How much do we tax? What taxes do we use compared to other cities? And I felt proud of what a good job we've been doing, but at the same time I felt, gosh, we're a little tight-fisted. We compared to what other cities spend per capita, we're very low. And so I thought, well, we enjoy a wonderful life here. Perhaps we should pay a little bit more for it. And continue the good services that we have.
I originally approached this thinking we need to make sure the public gets a chance to vote on whatever we do, thinking that was the best way to be inclusive and to include the community. And as we worked through all the potential possibilities for ways we could raise the money we're going to need, it became obvious that that's really punting the city council's responsibility and the city's responsibility to create its own sustainability model. What's in this recommendation are the things we actually had consensus on. There are lots of other things in there that people advocated for, but they didn't have consensus from everybody.
I want to articulate an acronym that has 4 S's in it. Sammamish Staff Sustainability Services.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts and experiences to this whole task force and this whole process. Certainly was, it's a consensus. It's a joy to work with you in something that I thought would be more arduous.
I'm going to start with an apology to all of you and to City Manager. I was not convinced that this would work. I didn't know that we'd be able to pull off having people come together that didn't have a background in economic development in municipalities, and I felt like there wasn't enough time to really grasp and understand the complexities of the issues. I was completely wrong. I was mesmerized by your meetings. They were spectacular. I think the writer's strike might have helped you to a certain extent because I wanted to tune in to see what you guys were doing. But I have to say I had aha moments probably every 10 minutes with somebody saying something new or in a new way that I had not anticipated or foreseen that changed people's minds in the room. That is extraordinary. That does not happen. I was very impressed and got schooled, to be honest with you. So what I love about this is it's the best part of wisdom of crowds. The solutions you guys were proposing are understandable, relatable, logical, building blocks that meld into each other. They aren't a piece here and a piece here. There's componentry here that actually makes sense and that you can explain. Because to your point, you're correct. It's extremely difficult to come up with a positive solution and then explain it in a way that people want to absorb it and understand it. Because we're all too busy to really devote the time and attention that we must to things like this. But I believe that I shouldn't sell our residents short either, like I made the mistake with you guys. They will understand this. It is understandable. This flexible thought, this ability to expand and think about, well, what if we did it this way or did it that way? You've given us the tools that I think we need as a council to really develop something sustainable as we go forward. And I appreciate the effort that you folks have put into this more than you know.
I really appreciate your time and effort and that you whittled it down to something actionable and pretty and, like Karen said, very like packaged nicely so we can share out. I know we have a lot of decisions to make, but thank you, and thank you for your words. And what a cool group. So thank you again.
To the point of, I know it's a lot of work, and Mr. Boyer, to your point, do we just stop here? Do we do it a yearly thing? I think I would like to see us inspect and adapt. That's a term that you hear probably in many of your workspaces. I think that is what we need to do here. I was trying to imagine how this group would come to a consensus, but just seeing some very solid proposals, which we can take forward, which are very sincere and actually just not our easy solutions, just taking the easy path. So I really, really appreciate everything that has gone into this.
Just one question, and as a panel, I'd love to hear what you think. It was brought up. Do you feel like you had enough time?
I would say for our task, I think it was appropriate. In fact, we didn't run out the clock in every meeting. Scott didn't keep us here until 10:30, 11, like he keeps you guys here. If the task was to evaluate other things more deeply, then I probably would have needed more time to go through reams of financials, but I don't think that was our assignment. So for what we were assigned to do, what the charter said, I thought it was really appropriate.
Great. Thank you for that. And
can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
Councilmember Farrell.
Sure.
I just think a lot of that praise needs to go to our consultants, because they set up a process that really allowed us to focus on what we needed to get done and keep moving.
Awesome. My last comment was that I love that you put in there a communications plan. I think that's really, really, really important. And I look forward to us kind of working on that and try to get this information out to the public. I think I'm really grateful to see that and to keep that top of mind, because when you're looking at such a subject, all you're thinking about are numbers. But when you realize that there's a huge communication piece to that. So thank you for that. That was a really great point to raise. And
yeah, again, thank you. And I really appreciate this discussion as well, to really hear your thought processes behind it, not just what was discussed at the meetings, because as you've all said, this is the beginning, not the end, right? So I really appreciate understanding sort of the different perspectives and how you guys thought about it. I definitely think communication is always going to be key, because it isn't our money, right? It's the citizens' money that we're talking about how we're going to spend it.
But I do want to thank everybody for their service, and I was very impressed in all the meetings I watched. So thank you very much.
So again, I really do want to thank the task force, and I want to thank our consultants from Baker Tilly. Their ability to consolidate a lot of information and put it in readable and digestible format was kind of unparalleled. And we really appreciate it. It's given us a roadmap for our communication plan, to the discussion here at the dais about how we move forward with whatever that is. that we are able to, excuse me, do a good job of communicating. I think we're going to get property tax pie chart Tyvek suits for council to wear around the community when they go out to help with that. But it was a sizable task, and I know that while not provided all of the information, I think the information that the task force did look at was really the crux of what the issue is. And I think to where Steve and the team started, it is about the structural imbalance and about making sure that we reflect the community values. I think I shared with the task force that the budget is a reflection of community values, and we want to make sure that as we move forward, we are making sure to reflect those community values. And I think from that perspective, I think the task force did an amazing job of reflecting their individual communities, bringing them to the table and having a robust discussion. I thought for me, that was the piece that was the most compelling out of everything, is everyone brought their unique perspectives and their approaches and shared them, and they were all different. I think everyone would agree, and it was a privilege for me to sit at the table with all of you and be able to sit back and let go of the reins, if you will, and say, here it all is. Give us your opinion. And I think that's a piece that was powerful, and I really do want to say that this group was fairly amazing. And I don't know how we lucked out, but I want to thank you again, all of you, for being willing to step forward on, if you were to look on the scale of, if I was going to volunteer for the city, what would be the top 10 choices? I don't think this falls into any one of those. So I am really grateful for all of you for being willing to step forward and be part of this. And I think it will be very helpful as we continue on with our deliberations going into the mid-biennial budget review. And then when we come back after that point to reset the model and look at the recommendations and how we move forward. So thank you again.